Okay, so welcome to the both of you. Just a few words of introduction for Jessica and Martin. So Jessica Smith is head of communications at Aragon, which is a blockchain platform designed to create and manage decentralized autonomous organizations, DAOs. And this platform also offers a blockchain-based dispute resolution mechanism, which is called Aragon Court. And this BDR was originally designed to resolve disputes concerning the governance of DAOs. So now we are going to have a look at this Aragon Court, and you are going to tell us how it is now and how we could maybe use it in the field of social media environment and to make some content moderation. And Martin Schmidt is co-initiator of Q Protocol, which is a blockchain platform designed to integrate the benefits of public blockchains with the governance features of private networks. And Q Protocol aims to provide a secure, transparent, and efficient environment for decentralized applications. So to my understanding, Q Protocol could be used to design a blockchain-based dispute resolution mechanism which could allow stakeholders to participate in decision-making processes. So I'm not quite sure that I understand what you are doing at Q and at Aragon, but that's why you are here and you are going to explain this to all of us. Of course, the idea is to see the different mechanisms that we could build with the blockchain technology to make some content moderation on the social media. So Martin, my first question is for you. Could you please tell us more about the special features of Q Protocol compared to other blockchain platforms, and tell us how we could maybe use them for a good system of dispute resolution on social media? Thank you.
Hello? Okay, now. Yeah, so traditionally blockchain-based systems have been used as governance machines or governance platforms for deterministic decisions, so you have a certain input and you know what the output is. Now, there are a few protocols like Kleros that have gone beyond this code is law paradigm. What we are trying to do with the Q protocol is to take the best of both worlds in a sense. So it is a blockchain, a separate blockchain layer 1 on which you can enforce decisions that are deterministic, but you also have the option to enforce non-deterministic decisions based on private contracts that you conclude amongst each other. So the idea is that you have contracts that can be drafted in natural language and then can be implemented on the blockchain, and the dispute resolution mechanism, which includes traditional dispute resolution processes. So it bridges kind of the blockchain and the non-blockchain world, is used to resolve that. And so we're also now working together with Kleros to implement different types of dispute resolution mechanisms, which I believe all have their pros and cons. So not all methods of resolving disputes are equally suited for different cases, and we're trying to have different options that suit different environments and give users the option to choose the ways which are most appropriate to the case at hand.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Is it working? Now, Jessica. Where do things stand with Aragon Court? Can you tell us about it, if we can use it, and if it would be useful for content moderation on social media?
Yeah, I mean, the Aragon Court contracts are deployed on the blockchain, so folks can continue to use it. I will say that the focus of our team, Aragon deployed the first DAO framework in 2017. And we've been building this kind of technology since. And there have been many different iterations of the framework and different tools that have come with it. And part of this iteration was a suite of products called Aragon Govern, Aragon Voice, and Aragon Court that was meant to address more kind of emerging optimistic forms of governance at the time, including a dispute resolution mechanism. It was part of kind of Aragon's suite of history and progressive art, but it's no longer our point of focus. We've actually went back to Aragon's roots, which is developing a DAO framework and doubling down and focusing on that. So users can still use Aragon Court. We are still supporting it at the moment, but it is in the process of being sunset, and we are leaving it to projects like Kleros and like you to do this kind of work in this more opinionated form of governance, really developing expertise in that area. What we're focused on is really the framework level, which is like the lower level governance primitives that we need to build on blockchains. So we're really focused on a full stack DAO framework solution, which allows you to build dispute resolution systems on it if you so choose. But really what our protocol is that you have a vault which contains the assets on chain that you want to govern. So that could be funds, but that could also be a protocol. And it could also be, you know, like a channel or some kind of like on-chain social media platform itself. So you govern something on-chain in this vault, and this vault grants and revokes permissions to a plugin. And the plugin is what contains the smart contract logic that'll dictate to the vault what it can and cannot do. So within that plugin, you can isolate the code that determines the governance model, so you can really build anything in a plugin. And that's the core of the architecture. And that's the base layer. So that's really what we are focused on building, is really this kind of base layer of governance that you can build different models of. And we're removing ourselves from building the more opinionated technology and really working with projects in the industry and in the Web3 space to develop this specific and customized governance models that are gonna meet their needs. Because if there's one thing we've learned is that there's no one-size-fits-all solution here. So we're really focused on building these foundational primitives so that you can build these innovative solutions with them. So I hope that answers the question. It is in process of being sunset, but it's still, we're in this in-between phase where we're still supporting it and just kind of sunsetting it responsibly for our users.
So thank you very much, Jessica. So we've been looking all the day to AI decisions, algorithmic decisions, and now we have a new, I would say, problem, because we could use blockchain technology and not AI for dispute resolution and content media. Content moderation on social media. So, of course, the next question would be, what would be the advantage of using blockchain technology over AI to moderate content on social media? Are there different technologies which could bring different goals, or could we combine them? How do you navigate between all these technologies? I don't know which one. Yes, maybe Martin?
So a big question, I think, and we are, I think, right in the middle of wrapping our minds around what, you know, the combination of AI and blockchain means, or where the intersections are. There are different elements. So one is, if you have blockchain-based systems, AI itself can support in the governance of those systems, because, you know, as we've seen today, as we've heard today, the sheer amount of cases that you will get may make it not very practicable for humans to moderate everything, make decisions, resolve disputes. So here AI can, I think, be the line of first defense, where AI-based systems that help in the moderation. On the other hand, you have AI agents potentially then interacting on those blockchain networks. And in a sense, it's already happening in some networks, and that's going to increase. And one of the biggest criticisms of blockchain-based systems that they may be hard to use. We've heard that also from you, Anja, earlier on. It's still a hurdle to interact for some people that are not familiar with those systems. that's not a problem for AI agents, right? So we can expect applications to be flooded with AI agents, and then again, you do want some human oversight or some humans in the loop that can break circuits and make decisions, override decisions by AI agents in those systems to make sure that ultimately what we're doing in the blockchain space serves the humans and not so much either the machines. That's kind of the AI Armageddon scenario that we may be worried about, which may or may not be close. I mean, there are different opinions on that, but definitely on social applications that are blockchain-based, I would expect AI agents to be a force to reckon with, and we probably don't want that to, take a form that where human interests are overridden.
Okay, so if I understand well, using blockchain technology for content moderation on social media would not necessarily mean that we have an algorithmic decision or an AI decision according to the different legal framework, DSA, etc. So this is a way to bring back the human in the loop. That's the idea. So there is, can we imagine some situations where it would be an algorithmic decision, or is it always a human decision when we think about content moderation on social media using blockchain technology?
I mean, in most cases, it will be an algorithm decision because algorithms can detect spam, but as well as humans almost already, and they can do a bunch of tasks in content moderation as good as humans and way cheaper. If you can do it cheaper and with the right accuracy, that's the way to do it. As I said, other use cases, other situations, AIs are not very good because they are not good at understanding emotions, understanding the context in which some problem of content moderation happened. And there is also one other thing that when you train a machine learning model and they use it for making a decision about content moderation, they don't give you the reasons why they make a decision. They just statistically decide that this post violated the rules, but they don't give you the reason. So in the dispute resolution system, it's very important that there is a reason given why the person was banned from the platform. And this is because the person deserves an answer and wants an answer. And also because of regulatory concerns. We have been seeing that platforms are required to give a reason why they may take a decision on some user. So this is why we will still need a bunch of blockchain, human-powered systems. And what I think is that the future of dispute system design in content moderation will be a combination of, first, when you can do it with AI, do it with AI. You will still have appeal to humans, and you will still have humans when you need to give reasons. Maybe you don't need to give reasons to why either remove your spam, airdrop, click here thing, okay? But yes, for other more complex situations.
So do you suggest that a mechanism such as Kleros would come as I would say a second layer, but it's not the right word here. As a recourse instance after an algorithmic decision. So first we would have the first instance with the algorithmic decision, and then the second instance with Kleros and a human decision. Is it your idea, or one of your ideas?
That's exactly what we want to. That's exactly what we want to do. A human decision made under a transparent framework in a right way, under the right incentives that potentially could overrule a decision made by an algorithm. So that's exactly what we want to build in this context.
Okay, so this means that when we use such a mechanism, you consider that there would be less bias than when there is an AI that takes the decision, and it would be more transparent, right?
Yeah, it's in the sense that so the machine learning model you train this in a black box. You don't really know how it makes a decision. With Kleros, you have the rules, the guidelines that jurors will follow, and then you see how the decision is made. There could be biases, and because of people being biased in some way, and people have been always biased by different reasons, and I mean, Kleros is not here to change human nature, but the bias would be more visible and transparent, and so that would help us like avoid it in the future and correct it.
I am myself involved in the blockchain technology, and full disclosure, I'm a root node in the queue system. So basically, I'm, how would you describe it in the non-blockchain world, kind of like an arbitrator in the system. But let's say I don't want to use a hammer, and like we learned this morning, the whole world looks like a nail. To go back to the context, I think I want to remind everyone that it is still a binary decision-making process, and we talked about procedural fairness in the blockchain context and this morning. So there's a link between procedural fairness and outcome fairness. And so I think the human in the loop could add credibility to the outcome, or let's say credibility to the decision that is taken, and especially with the more opinionated proposals, and also that going back to the token-based decision-making, perhaps to the non-blockchain world, there's a great book by Chris Dixon out, who actually describes the history of the internet, and he says that the token-based approach could be a way to involve the user more in the sense that you actually have ownership, not only ownership of the decision, but also ownership of your data. And in our world, we talk about self-sovereign use of data, and I think that is very relevant for the training of AI models. Which data do you use, and also the data we generate on these social media platforms, even in dispute resolution, and also on the bigger scale of things, we have platforms that are privately owned, but let's say in the blockchain world there is at least a vision that you mentioned telecom groups, that the community might even own the app or the platform in the form of cooperatives that you mentioned, DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, and for the ones who don't know it, it would be community ownership of such a medium, and this is enabled by tokens and by blockchain. I'm kind of deviating from the topic a little bit, but there are more dimensions to it. But in this context, I would say that we have to be careful to define the use cases for it. Again, I want to remind binary decision making, so there is a limit to the complexity you can bring into such a mechanism, and there is a link between procedural fairness and outcome fairness. Thank you.
Jessica, would you like to? Yeah.
I think what's interesting to me about the intersection of social media, or like the social grid, and blockchain technology, it does merge my career, having worked in content moderation for a social media platform, and now working in governance infrastructure, is as the social grid is moving on chain. So as we're building these social grids on a blockchain where you own your digital identity, you have like a wallet address on the blockchain that's then tied to your content and what you create and what you comment and your interactions, that creates opportunities to govern these social grids on the blockchain and to create novel mechanisms to govern these spaces. So that's really, to me, the space that gets unlocked. And there are probably, like, what's important to preserve is the the kind of integrity of these grids at the level of the blockchain, meaning that you want to preserve like the right to privacy, and you want to preserve all the values that we're building on the blockchain for. So you want to preserve like the permissionlessness, the trustlessness, the autonomous execution of transactions, et cetera, et cetera. So you want to create this baseline infrastructure on both the social grid level and on the governance level, so that then communities can really kind of mix and match these different components to create governance structures and to create social spaces that meet their needs. And that to me is what's really exciting, is a space of innovation, and that's what we're focused on building right now, are these primitives and these modular building blocks to allow different communities to build governance models that work for them and to build governance models that are more sophisticated. So when you start tokenizing something like a social space, so you have a token, you enter this like chat through your token, then you can use that token to set the rules of the space. So you could find yourself in a world where these token holders who enter a social space can vote on the algorithmic distribution. Oh, I want content that is most recent. I want content that has the most engagement. So you can actually have like these token holders and individuals weigh in on what rules you set, on how the algorithm works, and then on the dispute resolution system. Do you escalate to a dispute mechanism? Do you use AI? Do you use these different rules? So when you start unlocking the possibility of mix and matching and playing with the modularity of what the social space can look like on the blockchain, what the governance space can look like on the blockchain, you really unlock all of these possibilities that we're not even imagining yet. And that's what gets me really excited, is like disintermediating these huge centralized behemoths and creating the opportunities for different communities to convene and create their own spaces with their own rules and their own mechanisms.
Just for some context of, how decentralized justice and how Kleros was built and why some things were decided, they were decided. When we started in 2017, there was no system for identity on chain. So you could not know that if you built a jury, some guy would not, just have many accounts and have many votes, because you did not have that possibility of preventing the civil attack. So the only way to prevent that before having a system for identity was through giving votes per token and not votes, per account. So, and for a long time, the only thing we had was that hammer. So we only could use that hammer to do it for the nails. Now, there's been a bunch of changes and improvements in the crypto ecosystem, and there are new tools now, for example, proof of personhood protocols, and proof of humanity, and others. Soulbound tokens, so now you can give some person some token that represents a non-transferable token that represents some skills or some belonging to a community. So now, instead of having like a hammer, what we have, and it's appropriate, we are in Switzerland, we have like a Victorinox, Swiss knife. We have more tools. So the pure Kleros decentralized justice system, as we built it in the beginning, is still going to work for a lot of use cases. And I mentioned, it's not very different than how Meta solves disputes. It's kind of a shelling point system also. But for other use cases, even in social media, people might want different things. Maybe I am a social media, I'm the owner of a group, and I don't want voting anonymous people. I want only people who are part of my community to be able to vote on the cases that happen in my community, because that's what the community agreed. That you can do now with proof of humanity and soulbound tokens. That was not possible before. So with these new tools, the design space is wider, and we can address different use cases that were not possible before. So this for a bit of context of yeah.
Helen.
No, I just wanted to ask about the diverse juror pool that you mentioned in terms of combating bias. As I understood your example, it seemed to me that the juror pool was outside of the Telegram community. Is that correct? And then how would you ensure that the jurors are familiar with the cultural norms of that community and are diverse to make ethical decisions?
So in the way that was implemented, it was in the pure token voting method, like traditional Kleros way. So you didn't know who the jurors were. Just had a court where those cases were, and Kleros drew people from that court, and you didn't ask who are you, what do you know, no. So you did have rules for the community, and jurors who made the decision in that court had to follow the same rules of the community. So if you didn't know the rules, or you didn't know the traditions on how people interacted there, you were in risk of making more mistakes of, that thing that seemed unacceptable for me is okay, so I will vote yes, but the community knows that it's no, so I'm voting the wrong side, I lose money. So even if you didn't know that the people who were the jurors were part of the community, they would at some point learn how the rules were and in order to make money and keep participating. So maybe it was a guy who never participated in the community but learned how to do it, and that's okay. So the diversity of no battery or censorship, it's only centralized. You didn't know actually what was the diversity in the pool, which is sometimes a good thing in the sense that you also cannot censor anyone from participating, because if anyone is like anonymous, then you cannot prevent anyone from participating. That's an advantage of being able to whitelist people. So what we are now researching, and that is what William, our head of research, is mostly interested in now, is, okay, now that we have identity systems and we have these SVT tokens, do we want to draw a combination of jurors that maybe I want only jurors who come from this community and that also have skills in XYZ thing. So there's a bunch of things coming from the collective intelligence theorems that were done that says that when you have more diversity in the jury decision-making pool, then you have like more accurate decisions. So now what William is researching is, what is the optimal combination of skills and characteristics to make the system work better, in the sense of being accurate in the decision and also in the sense of seeming legitimate to people who participate in the community. Because sometimes what happens is that even if you are like full believer in the pure economic incentive token-based system, people don't see it as legitimate in some communities. So they would still prefer either have a whitelisted kind of list system or just not use it at all. So in that case, well, I mean, it's good to still give them the opportunity of doing as they want. They are customers in the end, so we need to also accommodate the system to what clients want. Yeah. Censorship. No, that's a censorship microphone.
Yeah, I think there is a balance to be struck. I think some types of problems work well with a purely economic approach. Others don't so much. So the question of diversity of jurors or decision-making nodes in a system is important. So for example, on Q, we have this concept of root nodes, which Anja mentioned and she's a part of. And that diversity is one factor of how those are selected in terms of both geography and vertical or background. So out of 27 root nodes currently, I think there are we have 14 different jurisdictions. One reason being, that shouldn't be subject to censorship in any specific jurisdiction, but also, of course, diversity of viewpoints and perspective on specific problems. So I think here, to me, the trick is to look at, what type of decisions do we have, and then structure the systems around it to fulfill the conditions that it works in a specific situation. And I think the beauty is, as you said, Federico, now we have increasingly more options also in the blockchain space to have things like proof of personhood, to have identities tied to wallets, so that we can really pick the best of both worlds. And I think also Anja and Helen, this is what you alluded to in your presentation, that maybe this is the way forward, to have both the benefits of decentralization, but also have humans in the loop with known identities, maybe as escalation mechanisms, or depending on what type of content you moderate, what type of decision you're making.
Right, because just being part of the DDR system and being a juror already implies having tokens. That's why I liked what Jessica mentioned, that users have to be token holders to be able to actively shape and participate in the system, and that was also the idea that we addressed. So I think there we have to make a differentiation then to see that, yeah, people who have tokens might not be that diverse, and that might not include minorities.
And also kind of getting back to the user perspective, we discussed this user inactivism, and again, full disclosure also in the DAO, in, let's say, communities that use blockchain to govern themselves, so-called decentralized autonomous organizations, we have a certain participation fatigue, and we discuss the situation of so-called DAO politicians that are very active and are voting, but then others are not voting. But let's say overall, with this caveat, we discussed user inactivism, and let's say if the platform is not used by the, not owned by the user, if the user does not own their data, also not really having a stake in the process, and then is actually asked to voluntarily keep the network clean without any reward or any remuneration. I think this, let's say, as a take-home, also the idea that you might use a token-based system to actually make the user a contributor, and also basically not just rely on volunteers, and this could be just the loudest voice on the block, but actually beyond economic incentives or speculation, but perhaps find people who really apply their experience, kind of the Wikipedia super user who actually gets rewarded for the expertise they are actually using in the sense of experience.
Yeah, and I will specify, like, I use the token, say like the token-based community as one example of how you could build a governance system like that, but there's also, like you're mentioning more of the Wikipedia example, we are working with a project right now who's integrating governance at scale through their protocol and through their platform, and it is going to be something like an on-chain Wikipedia where you grant these permissions on-chain for certain editors to review and edit the work, and they can earn these kind of positions or permissions in these different spaces through their expertise, through their reputation in the community, etc. So we are seeing different models, like tokens is one way to do it, whitelisting addresses or giving permissions to different addresses is another way to do it. Basically any way that you can build a census or define a permission on the blockchain, you can create these different kind of moderation structures and governance structures for these social spaces. So it's truly like a wide space of possibility.
Does anyone have a question in the audience? Yes, Jamila?
Thank you so much. It was very interesting to hear all your presentations. So I also work in Kleros, and we often discuss the notion of fairness, and what Yann mentioned today is that fairness is, well, very subjective. Let's say in different communities, people define a fair decision based on different values and pre-agreed rules. And my question is like maybe broad and a bit provocative, because I'm thinking, how do we design tools for dispute resolution, whether that is for blockchain-based dispute resolution tools or online dispute resolution that is compliant with, well, international laws, local regulations, but also with community values? Or how do we, for example, make existing platforms how do we hold them accountable? Because we had Sabrina's presentation about the board, and I'm just seeing the problem to make. I see the tension between community values and then local regulation and rules, and also platform terms and conditions and policies. So do you have any ideas of what is the best way to approach that?
So who would you like to answer? Yes, Martin or Jessica?
I'll start with just a high-level comment, and then I'll let folks niche down with their expertise. The way that I view it, I feel like there's like a foundation of blockchain technology that needs to be protected in terms of its like requirements to comply with XYZ regulation or local laws, etc. So you kind of have to see it as analogous to the internet or telecommunications as like a layer that should have some degree of protection to protect these foundational building blocks. From there, when you build applications and when you build platforms, I do think the ability to build more kind of niche or targeted or specific platforms for specific communities will probably facilitate these kind of like compliance questions and navigating these spaces. And that what you'll see like at the application level and at the platform level should probably look very, very different than what you see at the like foundational blockchain protocol level. And I think these two layers need to be treated differently, and that it's very important to preserve the neutrality of the foundational layer so that you can comply and build governance models that meet all the very diverse needs of these different communities and different kind of national legal frameworks.
One aspect of fairness for me personally would be giving users the ability to opt in and opt out of different systems, which implies as a condition that there are different systems. I mean, if you have strong monopolies or oligopolies, maybe technically they can make the decision whether to use those, but factually the choices are very limited. And both centralized or decentralized systems can tend towards concentration. I think though that by their very nature, decentralized systems, if they're open source, if people can deploy their own applications, tend less towards centralization, even though it's not binary. And user choices or opting into different systems, it becomes much more real. I mean, this is, I think, what we do see in the blockchain space, even though it's still very early and numbers also on social applications that are blockchain-based are still, of course, very low compared to what we see in Meta, Twitter, or X, and so on. But you do see a lot of dynamism there, and if things don't evolve in a direction that the community appreciates or people in the community appreciate, they simply move elsewhere. And the network effects or lock-in effects are not as strong as they tend to be with companies that can lock in their users. So I think that to me is an important element of fairness. Secondly, also having ex-ante certainty about what the procedural guarantees are important. And again, those tend to be stronger in decentralized blockchain-based systems because they are based on smart contracts. And then, of course, you do have elements of humans that do interact with those systems. So again, it's not binary, but I think per default, this ex-ante fairness tends to be higher in blockchain-based systems compared to centralized systems run by companies.
Just also maybe to add something, sometimes the solution is like simpler than what we think. We are doing blockchain and we are like obsessed of having everything on chain because everything should be super secure. Sometimes from the point of view of the user, that's not what brings more value or satisfaction to the process. We have learned in a process we are doing, a project we are doing with a cryptocurrency exchange from Argentina called Lemon, that if you use a system for Kleros for solving disputes between the company and user, The user don't care if part of the process is off-chain. The user cares more about jurors giving a justification why they decided the way they decided, and that increases their satisfaction by like 50%. So, and then they don't expect the company not to comply with the decision made by the jury of Kleros. So the company could eventually not comply because it's off-chain enforcement. And so sometimes, in the crypto ecosystem, people are so obsessed with trying to find super modern decision-making system, like a future key, and all prediction market, which are very hard to understand for most people. And sometimes, just explain to the user why he's banned, and then, that will increase, the satisfaction a lot, and the process will look more fair just by good justification,
Oh, she's leaving. No. No, but just the fairness. I politely want to disagree that it is subjective. I agree that there are probably different definitions of fairness, but I would disagree that it's subjective, out of hand. And I might have misunderstood you, but in the morning we discussed procedural fairness, and there is a legal definition to it, we actually discussed that this morning, how we could define it and kind of get beyond this dichotomy between private and public. But let's say I would add again the escalation model, perhaps, that as long as we are, for example, in the flagging or rating area where we have different elements of fairness that are involved, as, for example, meaningful participation, or to have a random selection of euros. But let's say if we are really in the area of violation of rights, I think there is, at least in the US, there's a clear definition of what fairness means. And for example, it's a day in court. Meaningful participation there means that you are able to contest the evidence, that you can actually voice your side of the dispute. And and I think that is probably kind of even common sense, but I just wanted to throw that out here. Thank you.
So thank you very much. I think that we are a bit running out of time. Is it okay for you if we stop here? Okay, so thank you very much. So I'd like to thank our speakers, Yann, Federico, Anja, Helen, Jessica, and Martin, who are specialists in blockchain and ADR, ODR, BDR, whatever we call them. And thank you very much for this very interesting discussion on the application of blockchain for dispute resolution and on social media.